Maybe that kind of goes with another saying, but today it's going to go with faith. How much faith do you have? How much is needed? How much is needed to do? And you can just think of things that you want to do or have done. How much faith was needed? How much faith was needed for you to sit in the chair? Probably not a whole lot. You're assuming it's a reasonably constructed chair, so it didn't take a lot of faith, and you just sat down. Maybe there's other things in your life that require a lot of faith, and you're not taking that step forward. You're holding back, and you think, I don't have enough faith. Maybe you're here today and you don't have faith at all. You'd say, no, I don't believe anything. I'm just here for, the hot dogs. That's okay. Hopefully by the end you'll move from no faith to having faith in a God who loves you. This morning, as we're going to look at a story in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it's easy sometimes to look at stories like this and make the character in that story the hero, but that'd be a mistake. The mistake is he's just another guy, just like you, just like me. And the guys and gals in this book, although they're recorded for us forever, those aren't the real heroes. The real hero is Jesus. And if we make Gideon, who's the focus of the story, the hero today, and we all go, oh, I want to be more like Gideon. Well, that's, it's kind of true. There's some elements to that, but we want to be more like Jesus. And that's true whenever you read the Bible. Wherever you are, as you read, you're looking to see, what does this tell me about Jesus? How does this point me to Jesus? How does this reveal Jesus to me? Because the whole story is about Jesus. The Bible says in Hebrews that without faith it is impossible to please God. And that's for everyone. If you're already a Christian, you still need to have that faith. It needs to be a growing, ongoing thing. What is faith? Well, Hebrews 11:1 says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. In other words, at the end of the day, no matter how much evidence there is about God, there's still that moment where you got to step off the cliff, so to speak, or off the stage. You got to take a leap. And amazingly enough, God fills in those gaps. As we move forward by faith, trusting in a holy God, He's got us. And we just sang about it. He's a good, good Father. You're not going to take a step of faith and go, there's God laughing at you. Like, got him, yeah. That's 300 million people this year, yeah. No, He's got you. And so, as we look at this story here about Gideon, we're going to see someone who, at first glance, and many times, if you've ever heard this story, he's looked at as someone he's got no faith. He's just like a scaredy cat hiding away. But what we see is a faith that grows because he keeps looking back and looking up and listening to God. And when God speaks, he responds in kind. And that's all that God asks of us. As he speaks, we respond. And so he's not going to ask you to do something that is so crazy that you're like, I just can't. If he asks you to do it, he's going to enable you to do it. So, Judges chapter 6. It's in the Old Testament. It begins this way. I'm going to read a few verses and then we'll talk about it. Chapter 6, verse 1. The Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight. So the Lord handed them over to the Midianites for 7 years. The Midianites were so cruel that the Israelites made hiding places for themselves in the mountains, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, marauders from Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east would attack Israel, camping in the land and destroying crops as far away as Gaza. They left the Israelites with nothing to eat, taking all the sheep, goats, cattle, and donkeys. These enemy hordes, coming with their livestock and tents, were as thick as locusts. They arrived on droves of camels, too numerous to count, and they stayed until the land was stripped bare. So Israel was reduced to starvation by the Midianites. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help. What's the situation? What's going on? Who are these people? They're like, Midia, who? Well, they're a group of people that God is using to discipline the people of Israel. Yeah, God is allowing and orchestrating a group of people to come into a land to disrupt and discipline his people. What it tells us is that the Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight. Now, if you're new to the Bible, this wasn't, okay, one day they did something bad and God said, well, 7 years, you're going to just suffer. This was a continual rebellious state and continually taking warnings from prophets and ignoring them. And so God knew the only way for them to turn from their sin, to turn back to Him, to get their attention, was to allow something this catastrophic to happen in their lives. These Midianites, they weren't exactly nice people. They were very cruel. It tells us that they came on camels. This is the first kind of long-range paratrooper before airplanes. It was para-camels division. And so they could travel up to 100 miles a day on these camels. And so it really changed things. And they came, not all the time. It wasn't like an invasion where they just hung out, in Israel for 7 years. They would come and go. When did they come? They came at harvest time to plunder and to take everything the Israelites had waited for all year long. Imagine your fruit trees and your crops, and it's really close. We've had different backyard barbecues the last few years, and a few times at different houses, kids have inadvertently, or maybe burntly, I'm not sure if that works, but picked fruit from trees before it's time. And you're like, oh no, July is not the time for apples. They're still kind of sour and they're not quite, you need to wait and let. So imagine those kids would come back in October while you're sleeping and take all your apples. How would you feel? You'd feel a little ripped off. You're like, what? Are you going to make me a pie with that? Well, the people of Midian came and they would do that to the Israelites who had waited for harvest time. And they would take all of their crops, all of their fruit, everything, and they would plunder them so much that the Israelites were starving. They were waiting. They had nowhere else to turn. It says, and then they turned to the Lord. They're kind of stubborn people. 7 years has gone by. Now think of your life, and when things are not going well, how long do you wait before you turn to the Lord? A minute or two, a day or two. When you've exhausted all possibilities, I guess we should pray. Well, the Israelites took 7 years, and then they decided, we should call out to God. Maybe He can help us here. You think? That would be a good plan. So step one is simply turn to the Lord. When you don't have the answer, when you don't have the resources, when you don't have the ability to change the situation for yourself, turn to God. He's the one that has answers. He's the one that can change. The interesting thing about this, though, is it doesn't say anything about them repenting. They're crying out to God, but their heart is not changing at this point. They just want the situation to change. And isn't that true for many people today? It's not that they want God. Maybe they want what God can do for them. And it's how people pray. And maybe most of us at one time have prayed, and maybe we pray like this too often, is our list of things for God to fix, to do, to give us, and thank you, God. And we put a bow on it with an amen, in Jesus' name. Why? Because we want God to intervene in our life and to do stuff for us and to be something for us. All okay. I'm not saying don't pray. But it's interesting. A lot of times we pray very selfishly. But there isn't that, hey, I wonder if this is happening for a particular reason in my life. I wonder if this situation God is allowed to correct something in my life. Sometimes that's what happens. It says God disciplines those He loves. It's just like disciplining kids. If you don't love your kids, let them run wild. And if you want to see some of those kids, you can come to one of the public schools. They're out there. Private schools, homeschool. The kids are out there that are not being loved well, and they're not being disciplined. But if you love your kids, you're going to discipline them. It's just what we do. God does that with His kids. He disciplines in love. But here's the great thing. When we call upon God, Psalm 34:6 says, when we cry out to the Lord, He answers. He's not a God far away. He's not a God that created the world and, He just spun it like a globe and sat back and onto the other things. No, He's intimately involved. On Wednesday, we looked at Psalm 139. It talks about how God knit us together He intricately, carefully made us. Very tricky word. He carefully made us, each one. And He knows what thoughts you have before you even say those words. And so when you cry out to Him, He's there. Because He's waiting to intervene into your life. He's waiting to say, yeah, I'm here. I'm waiting for you to ask and to invite me into the situation. And a lot of times we miss out because we don't invite Him in. And we wonder, why did it get so bad? Well, you didn't talk to the Lord. So they cried out to the Lord. Well, let's see what happens when they cry out to the Lord. Verse 7, when they cried out to the Lord because of Midianite, the Lord sent a prophet to the Israelites. He said, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of slavery in Egypt. I rescued you from the Egyptians and from all who oppressed you. I drove out your enemies and gave you their land. I told you, I am the Lord your God. You must not worship the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you now live. But you have not listened to me. God sends a prophet to them with a very clear message. Number 2, a very clear message. They were looking for relief from their oppressors. God wanted them to understand what the situation was. He said, listen, I'm the God who delivered you from Egypt. I'm the God who gave you this land. And I gave you some laws, some things to follow. You've ignored those. Of course, there's consequences. It's true for each one of us. We've broken God's laws. The Bible says all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. No one is perfect. What's the solution? It's turning to Jesus. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But He sends this prophet to make it clear to them, listen, you guys, you've sinned in your heart. You've rebelled against me. You've turned from me. Wow, that's a pretty harsh God. No, it's a loving God. He reached out to them. He said, hey, I brought you out of Egypt. I have the power to bring you out. I have the power to bring you in. And you've decided not to listen. And they thought the problem was the Midianites. They thought the problem was, if you just take care of those Midianites, everything will take care of itself. It will be so much better. And that's going to happen. But the problem is not the Midianites. The problem is within. It's a heart issue. It's what our nation needs, is a heart change. Oh, an election is coming, but one way or another, it's not going to change the focus and the scope and the direction of our nation. Why? Because politics and policies won't change the heart. God changes the heart. So God is letting them know this is a discipline issue. You're going through all of this because I want to get your attention. I want you to turn from your sin. I want you to turn back to me. Today we live under a new covenant. It's found in the New Testament where Jesus came. Not only does it say in the New Testament that we are all sinners, but it says in Romans 5:8, but God showed His great love for us in this, by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. In other words, God had a plan to take us who are lost and confused and far from God and bring us back into relationship through Jesus Christ. It means if you're here and you're a Christian, your behavior is not the issue. Oh, God wants to change your behavior, and there's all kinds of things in here about how to do this better and how to live righteously and all those rules and all those. But really, what it comes down to is a continued heart change. And if you're not a Christian and you're here and you're like, I don't know about this faith thing. I think God, He asks a lot. Just start with this: God loves you. And He'll do the work of changing your heart. Don't worry about, well, I do this and I do that. I don't think God's going to like me if I do that. Don't worry about those things at first. Focus on Jesus. As you get to know Him, as you surrender your life to Him, He'll start to change your heart. He'll start to change your way you think. And it's a process, and that's okay. So He sends a prophet. He's always sending someone. In the Old Testament, they were prophets, people bringing messages to God. New Testament, it was Jesus and then the apostles. Now we have this huge book called the Bible. You're like, I don't know if God still speaks today. Well, pick up a Bible and read it. He speaks all the time. You just have to read it. There's a lot there. You're like, well, I don't know. There's audio Bibles. God still speaks. Verse 11. Then the angel of the Lord came and sat beneath the great tree at Oprah, not Oprah, which belonged to which belonged to Joash of the clan of Abiezer. Gideon, son of Joash, was threshing wheat at the bottom of a winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. We'll pause there for a quick second. What's he doing? It says he's threshing wheat at the bottom of a winepress. Now, I'm not sure if too many of you are farmers. I'm certainly not. I'm kind of liking the city. But threshing of the wheat, it's harvest time. Usually they would do this out in the open, even up on a hill, pre-technology days, where they would throw the wheat up and the wind would separate the chaff and what's left is good grain. Well, he's doing it hidden away in a wine press. Why? Well, he's a big scaredy cat? Perhaps. But he's also a bit wise, because he knows if he's out there in the hill and he's got his grain in his blanket and he's throwing it up, here come the Midianites on those camels. Look out. Bye-bye food. So maybe we should give him a little break. What happens next? Verse 12, the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "Mighty hero, the Lord is with you." "Sir," Gideon replied, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say, 'The Lord brought us up out of Egypt'? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites." And the Lord turned to him and said, "Go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you." "But Lord," Gideon replied, "how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my entire family." The Lord said to him, "I will be with you, and you will destroy the Midianites as if you were fighting against one man." First we have the angel of the Lord appearing to Gideon. We're not told yet, it's going to be revealed shortly, but this isn't just a regular angel. This is probably a pre-incarnate, or it's Jesus in before Bethlehem, if you will. If you've heard about Christmas, baby Jesus, that happens a few more years down the road from this event. But throughout the Old Testament, Jesus would appear to people, and he's called the angel of the Lord. So that's just a little extra. That's a bonus for free. And he's appearing to Gideon. And look what he says. He says, "Mighty hero," or "mighty warrior." Gideon's looking around. "Mighty warrior? Who, me? Oy vey. I don't think so." Why? He's hiding. He's thinking, "No, you've got the wrong guy. It can't be me. There's got to be someone else. I didn't sign up for that." But see, the thing is, God sees the end from the beginning. He knows who you are and what he's made you for, even before you do, even before I do. See, when I was a kid, the worst thing in the world for me was talking in class. Getting up in front of people. Be like, I'll sit in the back corner. I know the answer, but I'm not putting up my hand. In fact, if there was several people I could kind of hide behind, I was there. That's the seat I would take. Why? Because I like to listen, and no, I don't need to comment at all. I know the answer, but I'm keeping my hand down. And God thinks, "Oh, that would be great. You're going to be a pastor." Really? Why? Because God knows not who we are at one moment. He knows what we're going to become in his strength. When he calls him courageous warrior, mighty hero, he's not looking at him right now as, "Man, there's a Navy SEAL. Boy, he is so amazing. He's going to take those guys out. It's going to be like Rambo on steroids." I mean, no problem. No. He just knows, I'm going to be with him. That's the whole key to the whole story. Because I will be with you. That's the key for us too. No matter what you're going through, no matter what's happening in your life, the Lord is with you. You're like, "Well, I don't even know the Lord. He's still there." Even though you say, "Oh, I don't believe in God," he's still there. Your unbelief doesn't negate who he is. Amen. He loves you. And he's right beside you, waiting for you to come to him and say, "Yeah, I'm ready." And as a Christian, if you're walking with him, you know this. You know he's there. And you know there's been opportunities, there's been times in your life where, man, if it wasn't for the grace of God and the power of God, you wouldn't be sitting here today. Psalm 139, I referenced it a little while ago. We looked at it on Wednesday. And it talks about how God made us and all these different things. And why that's helpful is because it helps us see not where we are today, but where we're going to be. Because if God took so much time and he knit us together in the womb and he has plans for us, maybe we should trust him a little more. Maybe as we'll see Gideon, he doesn't just say, "No way, Jose, I'm out of here." He's going to dialogue with God. He's going to have a conversation. God's not put off by that. But he does ask him some questions. He says, God, why? If the Lord is with us, why is this happening? If God is with me, why did I lose my job? If God is with me, why did my kid get sick? Why did this happen? And you probably got a list. Things in your life, maybe even right now, where you go, you know what? If God was with me, this would not be happening. If God was with me, then, and you could fill in the blank. And sometimes we think, because we're going through things, look at our country, go, where's God? Look what all is happening. Where's God in all of this? Where are the miracles? The Lord's abandoned us. Gideon's being real. You're like, man, if I talked like that to my dad, I'd be in serious trouble. No, it's not like that. It's a dialogue. He's saying, God, if you're with us, why is this happening? Where's the miracles? It seems like you've abandoned us. Maybe you felt that. Maybe you feel that. You feel that God's abandoning you. And you feel lost and alone. The truth is, Hebrews 13:5 says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." So we can confidently say, "The Lord is my helper, I will not fear. What can man do to me?" People are always looking for someone to blame. When things don't go the way you want it to go, you got to blame somebody. Well, let's blame the guy upstairs. Hurricanes, tornadoes, they're acts of God. Really? We've done this a couple times.
Been there, done that.
They're not acts of God. We should call them acts of Satan. Destructive tornadoes and hurricanes and tropical cyclones. God's not in the business of, let's kill some people. Let's bring a tornado here and a hurricane there. No, it's part of the fallen world we live in. And when bad things happen in your life, don't just go, "Oh, God did this to me." Sometimes God allows it. Yeah, we've kind of touched on that. He disciplines those he loves. That's true. Sometimes he's trying to get our attention, so he allows things to help build our character. Unfortunately, a lot of times the only way we grow is through difficult situations. But sometimes he's saying, yeah, you're going to have to go through this because it's life. What can you learn through this situation? How will you grow? Will you trust even though? Even when? Will you turn to me? Will you have faith? What does God say in response? He doesn't answer all the whys. You ever notice that? You ask God, why? You don't always get answers. There's some things you're not going to get answers to until you get to heaven. You're like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if I want to go to heaven then. No, you do. The alternative is not good. All right, it's not, oh, you just die. It's heaven or hell. There's only two, and so trusting and faith in God is realizing there's some things that are not going to be fully explained to us. There's some things we're going to have to just leave and go, okay, God, I don't understand. But the Bible tells me in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for good. And then part of that verse that a lot of times gets left out, to them that love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. And then he talks about those he foreknew and he called and he justified. In other words, God knows who's going to respond to him in their lifetime. And those things in our life that you go, man, this is not good. No, cancer is not good. Things that happen that are bad, we don't go, oh, that's great, that's awesome. No, they're not good. But God can take those not good situations and use it for good in our lives and in those people around us, if we allow Him to. Are you willing to move forward by faith? That's the question. See, Gideon doesn't give up. God says, hey, go with the strength you have. And Gideon's response is, I have no strength. I am, I'm the weakest of the weak. There's no hope for me. I can't even do a push-up. I was substitute teaching in the spring and was doing PE, which is real tough, And some of the classes, we had to do some testing for them. So I got these little kindergartners and, how many push-ups can you do? Well, try to get a kindergarten to follow directions to do a proper push-up is, I don't know what it's like, but it's difficult. Let's just say that. And, I just did 35 push-ups. I gave you 2, Why? Because I watched those push-ups. Those were not push-ups, It doesn't count if you lay down and then kind of jump up and, those aren't push-ups, It doesn't work that way. It's okay to admit you have no strength. In fact, the Bible calls us to come to that place of humility before God. To that place in 2 Corinthians 12:9, where Paul said, as he asked God, hey, take away this thorn in my flesh, Jesus said to him, my grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. In other words, if you're weak, you're in a good position. If you don't think you have it all together, if you don't think you have all the answers, that's okay. That's where you need to be. Because then God can come along and He can meet that need. He can raise you up. He can use you. The problem is sometimes we get, well, I know it all. I've been in church for 6 weeks, so I know the Bible. I've been in church since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. I've been to church since I was like 4 days old, so, I know it all. No. There's always more to learn. There's always more steps of faith to take. I don't take any more steps of faith. Everything's measured now. It's all calculated. Maybe it's time to take some steps of faith. Stop wanting everything explained to you before you move forward in God. Allow God to push you out of your comfort zone. Take a step of faith. You go, what if I stumble? What if I fall? I think there's a song. That's where faith comes in. That's where you go, yeah, I'm weak, God, but I know you're strong. God's not saying to Gideon, I know you're the best warrior because you trained and you've put in all this time, you've got excellent marksmanship with that bow and arrow, and I've seen you with a slingshot. It's none of those things. He says, go in the strength you have. He's like, I don't have any strength. Hey, I will be with you. I will be your strength. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. If you watch any basketball, that's been on a couple guys' shoes, or, it's like this popular, God strengthens me, to be an amazing shooter. Well, I guess, he blesses that. That's not the total intent of it, The total intent of that verse is that we rely on God for everything. That He strengthens us, and He does the work. Why? Because we are weak, and that's okay. I don't have all the answers. Well, you're the pastor, you should have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. So, if you got questions, we'll look them up together. Oh, I could do that? Yeah, you could read too. So Gideon has this dialogue with God. He says, I will be with you. Gideon asks for a sign. Because, it's one thing to take God at His value, but God, you need to show me. I need to see it in the sky. Gideon, this is what I will do for you. And if you know the story, He doesn't just keep asking for one sign or 2 signs. He keeps going. We'll read just a little more. Verse 17. Gideon replied, if you're truly going to help me, show me a sign to prove that it's really the Lord speaking to me. Don't go away until I come back and bring my offering to you. He answered, I will stay here until you return. Gideon hurried home. He cooked a young goat, and with a basket of flour he baked some bread without yeast, and carrying the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot, he brought them out and presented them to the angel who was under the great tree. The angel of God said to him, place the meat and the unleavened bread on this rock and pour the broth over it. Gideon did as he was told. The angel of the Lord touched the meat, and bread with the tip of the staff in his hand, and fire flamed up from the rock and consumed all he had brought. And the angel of the Lord disappeared. When Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, he cried out, "Oh, sovereign Lord, I'm doomed. I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." "It is all right," the Lord replied. "Do not be afraid. You will not die." And Gideon built an altar to the Lord and named it Yahweh Shalom, which means the Lord is peace. The altar remains in Ophrah in the land of the clan of Abiezer to this day. What happened? God showed up and he let him know. Yeah, see, if God would do something like that, I would do whatever he asked me to, Well, he has shown up like that in all kinds of ways. God's always working and moving in this world. The problem is we're looking for something so beyond because, well, it's not enough to have faith. We want it to be all proven. Well, start reading. God speaks, and then you obey. Look around. We have another beautiful day here for Church on the Pier. Nothing to do with that we could control. We just pick a day and say, God, hey, we're having Church on the Pier. We'd appreciate it if it didn't rain. And more of the people because I'm under the cover. And what happened there was he figured out this wasn't just an angel. This was Jesus. And he's terrified because he thought, man, I can't see God face to face. But what is the result of meeting with God? He built an altar and named it Yahweh Shalom. The Lord is peace. You see, when you meet with God, it might be scary at first. To move from faithless to faith-filled, or to be a Christian who's walking with faith but taking more steps than you've ever done before. You might go, pretty comfortable, kind of like where I'm at. And God's nudging and he's pushing and he's just take another step. The result will be peace. The Lord is peace. Spurgeon said, when Gideon is fully at peace, what does he begin to do for God? If God loves you, he will use you either for suffering or service. If he has given you peace, you must now prepare for war. Will you think me odd if I say that the Lord came to give us peace that he might send us out to war? What's happened? Well, Gideon wanted to know if this really was God. And God revealed himself to him. Just as we've been through the Bible given who God is through Jesus, the Prince of Peace. And as you draw near to him and you have that peace of God in your heart and in your life, the next step is, okay, God, here I am, send me. What would you like me to do? See, Christianity is not just a book of rules, so, okay, this week, check, that one, nope. That one, check, that one, check. It's not like, oh yeah, I did pretty good this week. Yeah. It's, God, I keep stumbling and falling, but I'm going to keep asking you to come and take over my life, to keep filling me with your Spirit so I can walk with you. And do you know what? God has no other plan on earth to reach other people but then through other people. Now there are occasions and there are times where Jesus is appearing to people and doing miraculous things like that and visions and things. But for the most part, the way the church grows is God works in a life and then they speak forth truth and people respond. And so your neighbor, your coworker, people you know, relatives, they're not going to come to know Jesus if you don't tell them. They're like, well, that's a lot of pressure. No, there's no pressure. Because you're just sharing what God's done in your life. And they're watching you. They're seeing more joy, more love, peace in a situation where you shouldn't have peace. You should be freaking out. You lost your job. Are you going to flip out about it? No. You should. How are you going to make that payment? What are you going to be able to do for that? How is that going to work out? I don't know. God's going to work it all out. I'm doing what I can do. God steps in and fills the gaps. We're like, oh, I don't know. It seems pretty peaceful to live like that. To trust God and to have faith that it's not necessarily that you're going to be rich. It says God will supply all your needs. You're like, my needs, huh? I'd like my wants supplied, That's what I like. Well, just work with needs. How about that? And we'll see what happens. Don't fear to take steps of faith. Sometimes as Christians we get comfortable and realize and think, when was the last time I really took a step of faith? When was the last time I did something that I didn't know exactly how it was going to turn out? And for me, that's something to think about. Because, as we go through this church life and I'm a pastor, I can plan out things and think, okay, it's all planned out. But when's the last time we tried something that was just unusual? Different, that, seemed to be a bit of a risk. Oh. Well, we had a night on Friday. It was a worship and prayer time. It's not a risk because God draws near when we draw near. But it's kind of one of those things of, I guess we'll do it. I know not many people will come, but, we'll do it. Like, that's the wrong attitude. How about, we did it because, man, the Bible says where 2 or 3 are gathered, He's there. And we get to meet with Jesus together. And it was a sweet time. These steps of faith don't have to be, I'm moving to Africa tomorrow. It could be. Maybe you're supposed to. Maybe not. That's how God got me to Ukraine. It was just a random missionary speaking at a church, and God spoke some stuff through him, told some stories like missionaries do, and God said, you need to go to Ukraine. And 6 weeks later, I arrived in Ukraine. And 3 days after I got there, I met this beautiful lady here who plays the guitar. She grew up on Whidbey Island, which is over that way, and I grew up in Ontario, far, far from here, in the land called Canada. Beautiful place. But God had this plan for us to meet in Ukraine. But what if I said, God, I can't go. See, I was in Bible college. I still had a year to go. People are like, how are you going to finish school? I don't know. It'll get worked out. Why? Because there was peace. And God worked out the details. And then some. So whether you're here and you're a Christian or you're not a Christian, what's your next step? If you don't know Jesus, this morning we're given an opportunity as we prepare to close. We're going to ask the worship team to come on up. Hopefully they're finished with all their crafts back there. And we're going to give you an opportunity to respond. If you don't know Jesus and you don't have a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, we're going to give you that opportunity. Because there's nothing greater. There'll be no greater decision that you'll ever make than to follow Jesus and to invite Him into your life, to ask Him to forgive you of your sin, and you'll turn from darkness to light. And then we're going to have a baptism. We've got one person, and maybe there's more that, I've never been baptized. Is that something we're supposed to do? Yeah. Jesus commanded it. Like, suggested it? No, commanded. So if you're a Christian and you haven't been baptized, hey, water's open. If you already have that relationship with God, that's a step of obedience. That's going to help you take more steps of faith in the future. And if you're a Christian and you've been walking with the Lord for many years, pray and ask God, what's that next step for me? Make it something so crazy, God, that people wonder if I still have it together. Make it so that I can't figure out all the details. So I take steps of faith because I know you're with me. I'm going to close in prayer. The worship team is making their way up. And as we close, if you're here this morning and you don't know Jesus, and you'd like to know Him, you'd like to have a relationship with God through Jesus, I'm going to invite you to come on up and stand up here at the front. Worship team's going to sing the last song. And then we'll pray together. And then we're going to close and life will go on. We're going to go have a baptism. We're going to have some hot dogs. We're going to hang out. So you don't have to run away. If you have questions, don't leave unless you talk to someone and get those questions answered. Take steps of faith today. Father, we thank you for